Happy New Year and welcome to January's edition of 4 and 4. I'm Kathy Halgren, Director of South St. Paul Public Library, and this month's titles feature a deceptive husband, a serial killer with a twist, a family torn apart by World War I, and a psychic hospice worker. My first book is Australian author Liane Moriarty's The Husband's Secret, which has been very popular at our library, and I just had to find out why. It's similar to many books that are commonly called women's fiction, but there's one big difference. It opens with Cecilia Fitzpatrick, an in-control supermom, accidentally finding a letter her husband wrote years ago and then misplaced. It's addressed to her in the event of his death. So, what does she do? Open it? In most novels like this, the secret of what the letter holds would be revealed near the end. Not so here. Cecilia does open the letter, and then the rest of the novel deals with what the two are going to do about his revelation. There are interweaving stories with other major characters and issues that are just as engrossing. And I did figure out what his secret was before the letter was opened. But what's phenomenal about this story is how the author presents this couple working through the pain, indecision, guilt, etc. that they must face in light of a decision made years ago. I definitely recommend it. South African writer Beukes has taken a typical serial killer novel and turned it on its ear in The Shining Girls. Harper Curtis has stumbled into a time travel portal in an old dilapidated house in Chicago. In one of the house's rooms, he sees all the names of his victims shimmering, beckoning him to act. As he leaves the house, sometimes he's back in the 1930s, sometimes he's in the 1950s, sometimes he's in the 1990s, and he visits his Shining Girl victims, women whose lives seemed full of potential when he first saw them throughout the decades. One of his victims, Kirby, actually survives his attack, although he does not know that, and she decides to try to track him down by learning as much as she can about his other victims. I'm not a big fan of time travel novels, and the reviews are all over the board, but I do think this author has a real talent for creating believable, vivid characters in just a few pages. If you don't think this will float your boat, I'd recommend John Katzenbach's Red 123, which was just released. In this novel, a serial killer who is also a writer is hungry for fame and decides to track down 3 red-haired women in a takeoff of the fairy tale Little Red Riding Hood. Great, tight writing. My next book, The Cartographer of No Man's Land by Minnesota author P.S. Duffy, is a real gem. I learned more about World War I with this book than I've ever known before, but it's not your typical historical war novel. Angus McGrath of Nova Scotia enlists, thinking he will be a cartographer in London. Instead, he's sent to the front line in France. But he really is there because his brother-in-law is missing in action, and he's on a mission to figure out just what happened to him. Meanwhile, his 13-year-old son, Simon Peter, is back home in Nova Scotia trying to keep it together as his community falls apart with his father an ocean away. Their incredible bond is defined in a gorgeous passage in the beginning of the book where Simon Peter and his father are out in a rowboat, experiencing the beauty of the dancing water and their closeness as father and son. Duffy excels in portraying the longing of families separated because of war, as well as the turmoil experienced once a soldier returns. She will be appearing at the library on May 8th. Finally, more people that I'd never guess would read Stephen King have been telling me how great his newest book, Dr. Sleep, is, so I figured I'd have to let you know about it. Little Danny from The Shining, King's book from the 70s, has grown up, for better or for worse. In fact, the book opens with 2 quotes from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, so you know what road he's taken. But he's also become known as Dr. Sleep, who, with his prophetic cat, helps people move on into the next phase of life at a hospice center. Meanwhile, the evil True Knot is constantly in search of children with the same psychic powers he had as a child, and his life is renewed as he helps a young girl who has even more powerful gifts escape this band of paranormal cannibals that feed off the steam of shining children. My second book review dealt with shining girls, and now we have shining children. At any rate, if you've ever thought about entering the otherworldly realm of Stephen King, this just might be your book to give it a try. That's all for this edition of 4 and 4. See you in March with 4 more titles in 4 minutes.